Our former Congressman Bob Barr came from Georgia, represented his state from 1995 to 2003. He was a senior member on the Judiciary Committee and was vice chairman of the Government Reform Committee. Since leaving the House, Congressman Barr has worked extensively on privacy issues with organizations like the American Conservative Union and the Harvard Kennedy School of Government. We're very pleased to have him here today. He is currently the 2008 Libertarian nominee for President of the United States. Welcome back to the Judiciary Committee, Bob Barr.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It's always a pleasure to come home to this great institution, the Congress, and of course this committee. And I very much appreciate the members here today, represented by the sitting ranking member, Mr. King of Iowa. We've heard earlier today, I forget which members in their opening statements, Mr. Chairman, alluded to various poll numbers regarding the presidency and the Congress and so forth. But there was a study recently gauging the public's awareness of and impression of something else that's even more important than political polls, and that is the privacy trust rankings of U.S. government agencies, which is put out annually by the nonpartisan Ponemon Institute. And very revealing in this most recent 2008 survey, ranking at not at the top of the list where the U.S. Postal Service is, which might indicate to some the depth of the problem that we have, that the U.S. Postal Service is the most trusted institution of the federal government, but ranking near the bottom is the Department of Justice. Nearly 4 times as many Americans would sooner place their trust in the U.S. Postal Service than the U.S. Department of Justice. That should concern all of us as Americans, and certainly all members of the Judiciary Committee, certainly regardless of which side of the aisle they sit on. And I think points to the very valid reason for the Chair convening this hearing today, which hopefully will be the first of many inquiring into and following on the earlier work of this committee to get to the bottom of what appear to be certainly problematic uses of executive power that do great detriment, great harm to the fundamental institutions of our government, namely checks and balances and separation of powers. One does not need to impugn the reputation or the motives of any one president, whether the current president or any other president, to recognize the validity and importance of the matters before this committee. As one of America's greatest jurists, Justice Louis Brandeis, said many years ago, and I quote, "The greatest dangers to liberty lurk in the insidious encroachment by men of zeal, well-meaning, but without understanding." It is up to this committee to provide that understanding, to point out to the American people those instances, of which there are legion with the current administration, in which, to be most charitable, that understanding of the institution of liberty is sorely lacking. Most recently, 2 of America's current jurists, I think, echoed in their own way in different contexts the sentiments of Justice Brandeis. For example, Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy, in a majority opinion, 5-4 majority opinion regarding the value and place of habeas corpus as an underpinning not just of our society but of Western civilization itself, said, and I quote him, "The laws and Constitution are designed to survive and remain in force in extraordinary times. Liberty and security can be reconciled, and in our system they are reconciled within the framework of the law." And another of America's current jurists appointed by President Reagan to the D.C. court, "You can fight the war," quote, "you can fight the war on terrorism and lose everything if you have no civil liberties left when you get through fighting the war." We've heard from some of the earlier members of the first panel and members of this learned committee on some of the specific instances of executive branch and separation of power abuses that we've witnessed with regard to the current administration and in recent years. Some of these trends began before the current administration but have been taken to new and unprecedented levels. And those are recounted to certainly a less eloquent extent than we've heard already in my written remarks, which I know the Chair will introduce into the record. But there are a number of specifics that I think need to be mentioned. We've heard reference to the secret OLC opinions, Office of Legal Counsel, by this administration. Here again, this is nothing new, but the degree and depth and secrecy of which I think is new and very, very troubling, again, as an activity that undermines respect for the rule of law, separation of powers, and the legitimate power of the Congress to conduct oversight of the executive branch. I quote just one, and we still don't even know the extent of even this one memoranda from 2001 because it remains still classified. But this was a memorandum that indicated that, quote, the Fourth Amendment had no application to domestic military operations, close quote. I mean, what in the heck is the administration talking about? First of all, about domestic military operations, and secondly, to display the audacity to declare that the Fourth Amendment does not reach and does not surround those operations, whatever they are, with the protections of the Fourth Amendment to our Constitution. That is the depth, I think, of the lack of understanding of the fundamental institutions of our government that have been displayed by and disdained by the current administration at a level taking them far beyond those problems that we have seen in prior administrations. This is not a problem with a particular president. It is not a problem with a particular administration, although the degree to which these problems have manifested themselves with the current administration is problematic. This is an institutional concern. For one thing, Mr. Chairman, every administration, in my view, and I think history bears this out, takes the power that it inherits from its predecessor and considers it a floor, not a ceiling. So if we don't get a handle on this now in some form or fashion, the next administration and the one after that, regardless of party, will take these abuses, these powers, these liberties with the fundamental institutions of our government and take them to even higher and higher levels. So I commend the Chair and the members of this committee for taking hold of something that could not possibly be more important, and that is the fundamental underpinnings of our constitutional system of government. I thank the Chair.
Thank you very much. I note that our former colleague to your right was nodding her head on occasion.